Oppai Hunter.
With no memories and no clue how they got there, Haruhiro and his team find themselves in a fantasy world. The team struggles in this new world as volunteer soldiers. They all eventually get stronger, but suffer some hardships along the way, just to survive.
That's it.
What the fuck else do you want me to say about this anime?
Story.
The plot is very slow to start. I get they were like trying to go for a more realistic progression system in this anime, but it is way too slow in the beginning, and it just picks up way too fast in like the last 2 episodes. The pacing is truly its worst enemy of this anime. It's interesting at times, but really the first 10-ish episodes are kind of boring most of the time.
One of the big issues with the series, I feel, is it lacks a goal. You don't want to be super blatant with showing the viewer where a character is going to end up by the end of the series, but if it's implemented correctly, it is a very useful element to add to the series to know that we are working towards something and at least have a general idea of what that something is going to be, where Grimgar really does not have that at all. And throughout, this dialogue is so insanely boring. A lot of time is just spent doing nothing, talking about nothing. Conversations just come out of nowhere. The pacing of conversations is super off, with people like pausing for like 20 seconds in between every couple words. And there's a death in the series. I'm just gonna put that out there. But it's blatantly laid out in front of you, so you know well before it happens that somebody is going to die in that episode. And it really didn't affect us as viewers because we barely knew the character before they were taken out. And afterwards, it really didn't feel like there were any stakes, because even when they were put in precarious situations, it was just kind of always in the back of our minds of like, they're going to get out of this. There's like, we already lost one person. Nobody else is going to die in this series. So it's just, there's not much going for this. And the final point is there's the problem with how this is classified as an isekai, because it is definitely an isekai with how they're brought in this world, but it matters zero. They don't even remember their past life. It's barely brought up past episode 2. And I feel like the fact that it's an isekai rather than just a regular fantasy series really dragged the story down.
So I basically agreed with Jason on some of my points. I said this was so boring of a story. There's no end goal or anything to hope for. Most of the episodes had nothing important, and if they did, it ended off quickly unless they're like super major events. The last episode, no spoilers, but it made me very mad because it ended up defying logic and made no sense, which just made it very disappointing. The overall storyline was honestly horrible. The story was barely an isekai, like Jason mentioned. It was more of a fantasy anime with few mentions of another world. Also, in a lot of the episodes, it had random, 2-minute, just nothing happening, just songs happening, just singing, and it's just looking at all the characters, no one's speaking. I don't get that. It was horrible. It was boring.
Characters.
The characters are very bland from the show. Because of how the isekai element was handled, the characters really don't have anything going for them in the beginning, and throughout the 12 episode run, not all too much changes from that. They have identifying personality traits, but not much beyond that to give them depth. And I think Mary is the most interesting character in that regard because she actually has a bit of history and a character arc to go through, but she's still fairly shallow even by the end of the series. And overall, the characters just ran from annoying to unremarkable.
So, for characters, you're gonna hear me say this word a lot, but they were boring and had very little development. Mary had the most development, and she wasn't even the original cast. Ranta could go die. I hate him. He's the worst character. I know he's supposed to be meant to be that way, but I don't care. I just hate him so much. Everyone else, I don't care for them. No development. That's all I can really say about them.
I'll be a little bit nicer and say the characters do have distinct personalities, but they're like stereotypes. Oh, Haruhiro's like the generic protag. Yume has big titties, so she has no brain. Shihiru is like the shy one. At least you can tell which characters are which, but besides like the one trait that they have, there's really not much character development there. I wanted more connections between the characters, but that didn't happen either. We kind of got like this kind of budding romance between Yume and Haruhiro until Mary came into the picture, and then they kind of just stopped talking to each other. And then less time in Haruhiro's thoughts would have been nice.
エンターテイメントバリュー
Very few funny moments. Very few interesting things. Not entertaining at all. I was on my phone a lot because I was very bored during most of the episode. That's all I have to say.
Agreeing with Monk, this show is very boring at times. When there are fight scenes, I was interested. The animation is really good too, especially for 2016. Not that like that was super long ago, but still. But most of the time, there's really nothing happening. A lot of standing around, a lot of just music sections for no reason. I feel like if there was more action, it would have been a way better anime.
So we've already discussed about how boring the plot is for this series, but I have to disagree with Jules on the terms of the fights because I honestly found them very unremarkable, from the choreography to the low sense of real danger, and for the fact that 3/4 of the series, we're just fighting goblins over and over and over again. As we get a little deeper, there's different types of goblins, but it's still the same types of fights constantly. And the way the fights are done, it's just people running at the goblins and then slow motion. They learned this new move with the money that we saved up. And that's just how all the fights just ended up. And then by the time you get to the end of the series, we get new monster types, but the fights are equally as boring. And like Monk, I was doing other stuff most of the time while watching the series.
ベストガール
Best girl for me by far was Mary. I knew it before going into this review because I've seen this anime before, but shh. I like her growth throughout the series. I was about to say season. There's not going to be a season. Of course, I really like her design. She's beautiful. But I don't know. I like that she had the most depth of all the girls. And I think her voice acting was done pretty nice. I liked her cold, icy demeanor at first, but then when you learn why she's that way, you kind of feel for her. And then as she gets acquainted with the party, she opens up a little and she really becomes best girl. She comes in late, but I liked her the best.
As far as designs go, I like all three of the main girls a lot. And throughout the series, Yume was my best girl because she has the happy, energetic, bubbly personality that I've grown to like a lot. But by the time we got to the end of the series, Mary took the top spot because I think she is the best looking and is absolutely the most interesting character out of the entire series. And she shows the potential to have some of the qualities that I liked in Yume after she finally opened up. So she just ended up taking the top spot by a good margin.
My best girl would be Shiharu. She's a very bland, boring character, but I like the way she looks, and I like her job voice because it's Ruby. That's really the only reason she's my best girl.
All the girls in this are Love Live characters.
But they're not Ruby.
Exactly, not Ruby.
ファイナルスコア
My final score for Grimgar is a 4 out of 10. The series really doesn't have much going for it. Were this to be a regular fantasy story with the characters having memories of their lives, I think this would have benefited a lot, so they don't have to dance around this isekai element that they just completely dropped the ball with. But on top of that, it really needed to have a goal to set their sights on and more variety on what was happening in each mission. I felt very early on that if we weren't watching this for Oppai Hunters, I wouldn't have finished it. I probably wouldn't have gotten past the 3 episodes in the beginning. And now that we've gotten to the end of the series, I can confidently say that I wouldn't have finished it and I would have been fine without it.
So, all I wrote for this is 3 out of 10. This sucks. But I will expand more on that. I was, again, very bored by the story. Didn't care for the characters. I just really didn't care at all. It wasn't the absolute worst. It had potential to be great. It had some good moments. But overall, I could basically just sleep to this anime, which is not a good thing. So I didn't enjoy it whatsoever.
Okay, so I'm gonna say I feel guilty about this because I really liked this anime the first time around when I watched it back in 2016. So I didn't remember it being this bad. So this is kind of my fault for hyping it up. But I personally give this series a 4 out of 10. I was really wavering between a 4 and a 5, but I decided a 4 because the pacing is just really inexcusable. And there never will be a season 2, so none of those issues are going to be fixed anyway. The characters are okay, the concept is fine, but execution just didn't do it for me. Like I said, I remember really liking this show, so maybe 2016 Jules was just too baby and thought everything was good, because that was the year I first started really watching anime, but there's way better isekai out there. Just look at some of the things we've reviewed, like Konosuba and Villainous.
That brings our official Oppai Hunter rating to a 4 out of 10. This series isn't the worst, but it's not really worth your time. Go watch Danmachi. Is it wrong to pick up girls in a dungeon? That's a decent show. Better than this.
Y'all having trouble sleeping? Put this on.
Yeah, big brain.
Knock you right out. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, all that fun stuff. Goodbye. See you next year.
Happy holidays! Why did
Holidays
I wave?
would kind of be over, but it's still New Year's.
Yeah, there's New Year's.
Happy New Year! You better stay subscribed to us throughout the New Year, or else we're gonna...
Sorry, we're out of time.